Hello, everybody. My name is Danny Diaz. Welcome to New Day Restoration. I'm so glad that you are tuning in to this video. So, today I wanted to come on here and talk to you about generational curses and demonic altars. So, I am going to tell a little story and then I'm going to jump into why I'm talking about this and why this is so important to the body of Christ and how so many of us are uninformed or don't even know about generational curses and how they may be impacting us and our family members. So I have some notes here. You'll see me reading off of my screen because I can't. I don't retain information well, you guys, so I have to read it off of this screen. So there's this prophet named Joshua Giles. I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with Joshua Giles. Well, a few months back, he said something that was so profound and so astounding to me, and it may not be astounding to you, but I'll explain why it was so profound to me. So he talked about Nuremberg, Germany. So for some of you who don't know, for some of you who are like history buffs, you understand what Nuremberg, you know that name. Nuremberg, Germany is where the Nuremberg trials were housed for the Nazi regime when the whole Holocaust was going on, right? So he was talking about how in Nuremberg, Germany, there were these scientific tests that were ran on children during that time, and they found out that many of the children that lived there suddenly had autoimmune diseases. So they were able to actually trace this back to trauma. So just the kids experiencing the being a product of their environment, they were so traumatized that they actually developed this autoimmune disease. And again, that may not be life changing to you, but it certainly was to me because my Oma is from Nuremberg, Germany. So she lived across the street from a concentration camp. And she experienced a lot of what we see on TV, all the movies and the documentaries. She actually lived that. So she lived across the street from a concentration camp, and she would just tell me about all of these stories. She would tell me about how she would hear the cries at night across the street, hearing the screams and the cries, and how that traumatized her. And it would always bring her to tears. It was very difficult for her to talk about. So she was still traumatized, as a mature woman, still would cry. So I remember in the eighth grade, in my history class, I had this assignment, and I asked my Oma to come and speak about that time. And she showed up, but she was so traumatized that she couldn't actually speak about it. So, what was shocking about all of this is that my Oma, she didn't have an autoimmune disease, but all of the women in my family do. So, that is my mother, my aunt, which is her daughter, so my mom's sister, my aunt's daughter, which is my cousin. I have an autoimmune disease, and then my sister also has an autoimmune disease. So it only impacted the women in our family. So one looking at this might chalk this up, like, just looking at it in the natural, you might chalk this up to being just like a hereditary illness. Well, it's not. This is actually spiritual. So the generational curse that was placed on our family came through my grandmother. So, how do generational curses and demonic altars get placed on a bloodline? Through sin and rebellion. So, there are countless stories about this in the Bible. Genesis, with Cain and Abel being the first. Curses can be placed on a bloodline through God or the devil. So, in this case of the Hirschman bloodline, which is my family bloodline, it came through fear. So we know that God did not give us a spirit of fear, but instead, fear is produced by Satan. So that whole demonic agenda during the Holocaust is what brought fear in. So we know that the enemy produced the fear. So fear was created the soul wound, which gave the kingdom of darkness a legal right to enter in and exploit that wound. So there's this misconception out there that Christians no longer deal with curses. It's so far from the truth. I often hear the argument that because Jesus died on the cross at Calvary, his blood paid for it all. So let's kind of dissect that a little bit. Yes, his blood did pay for it all, but in exchange, his blood did not eliminate curses. Instead, his blood gave us the authority to remove the curse. If his blood removed every harm, every curse for Christians, why are so many of us suffering from generational addiction? Why are so many of us suffering from infirmities and different illnesses that are on our bloodline? God gave us the ability to reverse the curse through the blood of Yeshua. So many of us have not gained victory in certain areas in our life because we do not have the knowledge of what's on our ancestry line. If you study your family, you will begin to see a pattern. How many of our families are plagued with unsuccessful marriages or divorce? How many of you notice the pattern of men dying early in your family or just death in your family early? How many have had a difficult time conceiving? Generational addiction, generational poverty, infirmities. This list really could go on. So you have the ability to be the repair of the breach, to restore blessings on the generations to come. So we aren't handing down curses and demonic altars to our children. I would love to invite you to join our next workshop. The altar will falter, tearing down demonic altars and ending generational curses. This workshop is an equipping tool to walk you and your family through deliverance and also to help others get set free. We will be laying down biblical foundation, discussing spiritual warfare, breaking down demons, strongholds, and familiar spirits, understanding spiritual legal rights in the court of heaven. We will also discuss how and why Jesus' blood is the key to freedom. During this workshop, we will be engaging in the spirit to clear a bloodline. So, if you're unfamiliar with our ministry, New Day Restoration, we are a ministry that teaches men and women how to stand in the gap for prodigal loved ones, for wayward loved ones, or people who have stepped away from God. And we understand that this is a spiritual battle. So, one thing that we do know how to do in this ministry is war in the spirit. We understand that there is a claim on that person's soul. So many of us are interceding and battling and warring for someone that is not able to battle for themselves. So that is what standing in the gap really is. You're standing in the gap and interceding and fighting for that person that is vulnerable. So if you have someone in your family who is bound, who is oppressed or possessed, you can be the repair of the breach. You can intercede and pray and call things off of their bloodline so they get released. So this is something that we teach in the ministry, and I want to open this up to the public so you can help your family members. So I need to warn you though. So this workshop is advanced. Some of these familiar spirits have been attached to our bloodline for hundreds, if not thousands of years. So as you can imagine, when we are calling things off of the bloodline, these spirits don't want to go back to the abyss. So they will not go out without a fight. So I do not recommend this class if you are new to your faith. I do not recommend this class if you struggle with mental illness because you need to understand the enemy's devices. We can expect retaliation. And usually that comes in the form of being attacked in the mind. So you need to be able to understand how the enemy attacks his tactics. So when it does come up and it happens, you know how to combat that. So that's why it's important that that you understand. So but we will actually go through that. So we're going to go through the whole process. We're going to go through the process of going through forgiveness. We're going to go through the process of taking you through the process of how to engage in the spirit and call these things off of your bloodline and to tear down demonic altars. So I am going to link the information. This is going to be a 3-part class. It begins on September 22nd, which is a Sunday. It's going to be for 3 Sundays. So 9:29 and then also October 6th at 6:30 p.m. Central Standard Time. You will need to register by the 20th of September. This is a paid class. So why does New Day Restoration charge for workshops? So we are a full-fledged ministry. We offer a lot of different services, discipleship, deliverance, counseling. We have an intercession, prayer night every single week, support night. We do many things, and we do not take or ask for, excuse me, not take, we do not ask for an offering or a tithe. So this is the way that we keep our ministry afloat, by charging for workshops, because it does cost to run a ministry. So this is why we charge. Not only that, we see that when people invest in the workshop, they actually show up. I put a lot of work and time in building these shops out. So, it's frustrating when you put weeks and time into this and then people register and they don't show up. So it's just an investment for yourself as well. These will be recorded. So we will also send these to you every time we have a class. But you can go to newdayrestoration.com, go under events and register. Again, you'll need to register by the 20th, and I hope to see all of you there. God bless.